Hi, M217. I'm here to help you read and write geometry. So here's our pictures. We need to know how to read them. That's what we're going to write here. How do you read them? And how do you write them in proper notation? And we write them in this column. So let's read and write geometry. When you see this first picture right here, okay, the little dot right there and the letter nearby, that is read as point A. So when I write it, I write point A. Easy enough. But what if I don't want to write the word point? I just want to write it in proper notation. Okay, proper notation is just the letter A. We don't put a dot, we don't write the word, we just put the letter A. But we have to know to read that as point A. All right, let's try a harder one. What happens when I have a dot and this little bit of line connecting them? Okay, that is called a segment. A segment has a starting point and an ending point. Okay, and it has this like bar in between. So the thing with a segment is the order of the letters does not matter. Okay, we have two choices. We can either call this segment AB, or I can switch the letters around, and instead of going left to right, I can go from right to left and call that segment BA. So when I read it, typically I go from the left side to the right side, and I will go left to right, and I will call that segment AB. But if you wanted to call that segment BA, you are more than welcome to. Now, how do we do the notation? What's the notation to tell somebody it's a segment? So we write the letters in the order we want to say them. So maybe I want to call mine segment AB, and we put the bar across the top. Now you do not have to put the dots on the bar. You can, but you do not have to. But let's say you want to go this direction. You want to call that segment BA. So when I want to write segment BA, I put the B first, then the A, and I put the bar across it like that. All right, so let's go to our next scenario. Our next scenario is different because of these arrows on the ends. So it's not like the segment with the starting point and an ending point. It has an arrow, which means it goes to infinity, and it goes to infinity over there as well. We read that as a line. That is line AB, or again, if you prefer to go in this direction, start here and end here, we can call that line BA. So I know how to read it, but I have to know the notation that goes with it as well, because I don't always want to write the word line AB or line BA. I need to be able to see it like this with the arrows. Now this one you do have to put the arrows. Line AB or line BA. Your choice. Left to right, right to left does not matter. Okay, now the next one absolutely does matter, because if you look at this scenario, I have one endpoint and one arrow. This means it starts at A and it passes through B and it goes in that direction. You do not have a choice here. Order is super important. You first of all, let's talk about, I guess, how to read that. Okay, one endpoint and one arrow. We need a name for that. The name is ray. It is a ray. It has an endpoint, and it has a point where it passes through. When you name a ray, you must name it starting at the end point. So I have to put the A first and then B. I do not have a choice. Okay, in my notation, again, we're going to say it's ray AB, and we're going to put the arrow over the B. You have to always start wherever the end point is. That must be the first letter you write. When you read it, that must be the first letter you read. Okay, I cannot call this ray BA. That is completely different. So just to be clear, before I do a little bit of other stuff on these guys, the order does not matter. But on a ray, order does matter. That's super, super important. Okay, let's take a look at a couple more examples. So in this first example, right, this is the same one we saw on the last slide. We said you read it as line AB, line BA, and there's our notation. So everything's exactly the same. I just wanted to take a look, well, what if our line doesn't go left to right, but what if our line goes up and down? If your line goes up and down, it's the same thing. It is still a line, and you still have your choice. You can read it as line CD or line DC. Okay, notation, same exact thing, no problem. Okay, here's our ray. So that's our ray example from the last slide. Everything's exactly the same. This, and I'm going to mark it in pink actually. This is the case you have to be careful for. Hands down, first day of geometry, this is the biggest mistake that anybody's going to make. This is still a ray. Okay, but we have to decide how are we going to name the ray. Okay, can we go from left to right? Because that's everybody's instinct, is to call this ray XY. Okay, but that's not how rays work. Remember, you must start with the endpoint. So I'm calling this ray YX. That's kind of counterintuitive because everybody wants to go left to right, but that's not how rays work. Remember, you find the endpoint. That's where you start naming the ray, and then you travel in the direction the arrow goes. Okay, now even worse comes when we do the notation. When I do the notation, I must start with the endpoint. The endpoint, is a Y. It travels through X. When I put the arrow above it for a ray, the arrow goes to the right. Every single time you write the arrow in the notation for a ray, that arrow must point to the right. So let's mark that here so you have that. Arrows face right. That's 100% of the time, non-negotiable. Okay, last one. I'll try to wrap this up pretty quickly. We are looking at a picture here of an angle. What makes it an angle? I've got one point, and from that point B, I've got a ray going in one direction and a ray going in another direction. Okay, two rays that join at the same endpoint form an angle. So yes, we can read it as an angle. How do I name it? Where the two rays come together, that endpoint, that point right there, I'm going to mark it in pink here for us. That point is called the vertex. The vertex has to be the middle letter. So we are going to use 3 letters to name this angle. We are basically going to go in the direction we see it. So it comes through A, into B, and out to C. That's option 1, is to call this angle ABC. So again, how does that work? We go from A into B, out to C. But just like with the segments and the lines where you can go left to right, I can go from A to B to C, or I can go from C into B and then out to A. So option 2 is to say angle CBA. Okay, now notice, what do these have in common? Right there, they've got the vertex as your middle letter, always. So let's go ahead and actually mark it in pink. So here's option 3. If there's no other angles on the picture, nothing cluttering it up, not lots of angles with vertices at B, I can go ahead and use just letter B and call this angle B. Okay, that's not always going to be an option. We'll talk about it in class. So in the notation, how do you mark or write an angle for somebody to read it? The notation, it kind of looks like a less than sign. So angle ABC, or angle CBA, or angle B.